The St. Louis Blues, they were fifth in the Central last year. Probably shouldn't have been that high even. If you look at their 5v5 stats, they were 29th in Corsi for percentage, 28th in expected goals for percentage, and 27th in scoring chances for percentage at even strength. That is very bad. Their
Yeah.
5v5 save percentage is, it looks like their goalies were actually what saved them last year, because their 5v5 save percentage was 913, which was sixth in the league. Jordan Binnington had a bit of a renaissance year last year and became one of the better goalies in the league, even though you didn't really notice because St. Louis was just kind of mediocre. Their shooting percentage at 5v5 was 22nd at 9.2%. The previous couple of years, they were right near the top of the league. They were extremely efficient, so this is quite a drop off for the Blues. And then their power play percentage was 18%. That was tied for 23rd, tied with the Ottawa Senators. That's not great. It could be a lot better. They did make some changes here. I don't know how many of them will be fantasy relevant. Their key departures were Alex Tessier, a guy they picked up at the deadline, Sammy Blais, also gone to free agency, and Marco Scandella. None of those really have big fantasy implications. They bring in Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg with those infamous offer sheets. Those are guys that could get some opportunity this year. I didn't project either of them. Just because I really don't know what to expect. There's just such a small sample size on both. And there's really no telling where they're going to play in the lineup. Like there's there's potential for Broberg to be the top power play quarterback, maybe like that. That's possible. Dylan Holloway, he could play in the top six, but we don't know. There's certainly a potential opportunity there. But it'll be interesting to see how training camp rolls out. And then Matthew Joseph is there. He's a good depth piece. And his brother Pierre-Olivier Joseph comes into the fold as well. And he'll be a depth defenseman on that team. How are you feeling about the Blues, my friend? They're a team that I kind of forget about a lot.
Yeah.
But what are your vibes on this team right now?
Yeah, honestly, I always forget about the Blues. I'm a big fan of them because they screwed over the Oilers with those Broberg and Holloway contracts. So I'm hoping those guys hit. I think Broberg on power play one. I honestly think it's an inevitability. Like you showed this guy, hey, we want you and we see your talent and we're gonna pay you some goddamn money. I think it's only natural that he gets his shot on power play one. And I don't see is Faulk really. Faulk, I don't know. Is he really the guy on power play one? I think there could be some room for Broberg to step in.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's certainly a possibility. That's not how I projected it. Obviously, I did my projections before these offer sheets happened, and so I could probably fix things a little bit to make it to have a little bit more shared power play time, but. Yeah, let's look at the goaltending. So we talked about how they were hot. There's another volume starter here, Jordan Binnington, 55 starts. That's four of these six teams that we've talked about so far have volume starters, and actually even five because Chicago technically Peter Mrazek could be a volume guy this year. He was last year. If Laurent Brossoit doesn't come back healthy. But anyways, we're talking about the Blues. Jordan Binnington, 55 starts last year. He had a 919 even strength save percentage. That was a huge year for him, especially when you look at the defensive metrics for this team. The environment in front of him was terrible. So he played extremely well. Joel Hofer as well, 27 starts, had a 922 even strength save percentage. So actually even better in a small sample size. We thought maybe Hofer could be waiting in the wings to take over for Binnington, but Binnington showed us last year that he is not ready to relinquish his spot as starter on this team. Do you see there being more of a split next year, or do you think it's more of the same in terms of Binnington being a volume starter for the Blues?
Yeah, I think Binnington has deserved to at least start the year out to be their number one. But it's Jordan Binnington. His head is everywhere. You don't know when he's gonna pull some Binnington antics, and not every coach is into that type of a goalie. So As of right now, I'd say it's Binnington's, but you never know. Maybe Binnington decides to suck again by October, right?
Yeah, it's possible. Where before we move on, Drew Bannister, you talked about coaching. Drew Bannister, a Belleville boy. I
Yeah.
realized this recently. I think I've said this a few times on the podcast now, but I was fascinated. I had no idea. I looked at his hockey DB one day and was very surprised. So if the St. Louis Blues somehow win the Stanley Cup this year, it's coming back to Belleville, baby, as it did this year with old Nicky Cousins. We only produce rats out of this town. Only
Pride
rats.
Pride and joy of Belleville, Nicky Cousins. Yeah.
Nicky Cousins, that's right. I shouldn't. You know what? That's disrespectful to Brett Hall. Brett Hall was also from Brett and Bobby Hall are from Belleville. Obviously, like all-time legends. But in recent memory, it's what Matt Cook, Nick Cousins, who is the other one? Andrew Shaw. Not a lot of rats. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways,
you know what?
I'm digressing
at least
like
those guys
crazy.
can play.
Well, yeah, it's true. They played NHL games. They played NHL games for sure. All right, why don't you talk about scheduling quirks for the St. Louis Blues?
Yeah, so they got 10 back-to-backs. That's tied for 29th in the league. 20 off nights. Oh, that's 32nd in the league. Weeks 22 to 24, their playoff schedule is 10 games with only one off night. Weeks 23 to 25, they still have 10 games, but with 2 off nights.
Yeah, man. This might be the worst schedule outlook of any team in the league this year. Just looking at the scope of all of these categories. They have 32nd, 20 off nights. That's 32nd in the league, otherwise known as last. And they're 22 to 24 playoff schedule, 10 games. That's a decent amount of games. I think the most that a team plays over that stretch is 11, but with only one off night, that's tough. Obviously, if you got guys like Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, they're going to be in your lineup and they're going to play a good amount. But if there's fringe guys, you're probably not going to want St. Louis Blues because you're going to struggle to fit them in your lineup. And then weeks 23 to 25, 10 games is actually a very small amount of games because there are teams playing 13, 12, 11. And then with only 2 off nights, that's one of the worst schedules of anyone over that stretch. So across the board, not great. Not anything to exploit for the St. Louis Blues. So another situation where, when we were talking about the Dallas Stars, the Minnesota Wild that have great schedules, near the best in the league, that's something that you keep in mind when it's so drastic. This is kind of the opposite end of the coin, where it's so bad that that's something that you need to keep in the back of your mind as well. Mm-hmm. All right. Power play projection. This is what I've got right now. I've got Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich, Jordan Kyrou, Jake Neighbors. Those were the 4 guys that played a good chunk of the year, and especially near the end of it last year, on that power play. I see that pretty much being the same. I think Kyrou, Buchnevich, and Thomas are the 3 best players on this team by far. And Jake Neighbors kind of broke out last year and is kind of a rough and tumble guy that can play the net front. So that seems like a nice fit with those other 3. And then I've got Justin Faulk. I know we were talking about Broberg before. I think there is potential for him to slot in there, but Faulk has played the power play a lot in the past and has shown to produce pretty well when he does get power play time. So I do think that there is a scenario where Faulk just quarterbacks the power play and is extremely productive. And in that case, I think you can get him for really nice value. But yeah, why don't you, like, you kind of talked about Broberg being a guy that could slot in there. Scott Perunovich is there as well. Is that a guy that's on your radar or not so much?
Not at all. But yeah, I Scott Perunovich, I've heard a lot about his potential, his ceiling. Honestly, I feel like as soon as they went out and got Broberg, that maybe they valued him a little less. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not really in on Perunovich. He was a guy that had kept an eye on for a while, had struggled with injuries, came in last year and just even when he got the opportunity didn't really produce a ton. So, and he is getting a little bit older. Like we see him as a prospect, but he's like 25, 26 now. So
Yeah.
it could be this is just what he is, like a fringe player that gets some power play time when other guys are hurt. So I'm not really sure. Like he may not end up even being an NHLer. I don't know. So we will see. And I think even just bringing in Broberg and Pierre-Olivier Joseph, guys that are of a similar ilk that probably have better defensive numbers than Perunovich, probably shows that they don't really have a ton of faith in him as being like an NHL regular. So I'm not really high on him at all, to be honest. So forward projections, my friend, why don't you walk us through these? There's a few eye poppers here as well on this team.
Yeah, let's go. Robert Thomas, 26 goals, 62 assists with 88 points. Pavel Buchnevich, 31 goals, 52 assists, 84 points. Jordan Kyrou, who is just an absolute steal. His ADP is disrespect. Jordan Kyrou is getting his 36 goals, 48 assists, 84 points. Braden Shen, the captain, 21 goals, 31 assists, 52 points with 152 hits. Brandon Saad, 21 goals, 24 assists, 45 points. And Jake Neighbors is getting 27 goals, 23 assists, 50 points with 135 hits.
Yeah, man. So with the exception of Robert Thomas, last year there was quite a drop off in terms of efficiency for a lot of these guys. Pavel Buchnevich was a guy that really dropped off last year. He's been a guy that has kind of pushed for point per game pace at least in each of the last few years before last year. So I do see him bouncing back. That's why I've got him right up that high. I also think that Thomas, Buchnevich, and Kyrou are all probably going to play together on the power play and 5v5 the entire season. And they're just by far the three best players on this team. Kyrou as well also had a huge drop off in efficiency, so I could see him bouncing back a little bit too. And then Robert Thomas, I think just status quo. Like this guy is he's a points monster. And he's really starting to lock himself in as a guy that's like an 85 to 90 point guy. So even without peripherals, I think he has a ton of value there, even being a center only player. So I like that line. Outside of that, not super excited for the Blues, with the exception of Faulk, which we'll get into in a second. Jake Neighbors, I think, could have some value just with the periffs that he brings and potential power play time, but is probably a streamer in most formats. So yeah, I don't know. Am I crazy for being so high on these top three guys? Is there anyone else that you like here?
No, I you know what? As you said, last year a lot of these guys, they did worse than what their fancy stats would say they should have. So this year, I see that you're projecting a lot of positive regression, especially for Kyrou. And last year Kyrou again, he bad vibes, pissed some people off. That's why his Yahoo ADP is 130. So I like that. I really like Kyrou. That's such a huge value for that type of a goal scorer.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into the defense here. So I got the two guys. We've mentioned both of these guys already, but walk us through Justin Faulk and Scott Perunovich here.
Justin Faulk, 12 goals, 41 assists, 53 points, 105 hits, and 131 blocks. He's a banger's beauty. Scott Perunovich, only 3 goals, but 24 assists and 27 points in total.
Yeah, so obviously we talked about how we're not high on Perunovich. That's what I've got for him, 27 points. It's not relevant. Doesn't do anything peripherally either, so I'm not stoked about that. And like I said, not really sure that he's going to get in the lineup every night, so he's probably not even going to hit those totals. Justin Faulk, this is my projection, 53 points, 12 goals. That's with him playing power play 1. Now, obviously, I projected him doing that when I found out Torrey Krug was not going to be in the picture. But obviously, like you mentioned, Philip Broberg could get some opportunity there. So maybe you dial it back a little bit. But I still think that Justin Faulk has some really nice fantasy value and is being fairly disrespected in drafts this year. His Apples to Geno's ADP is 132.9. His Yahoo ADP 162.8. So for a guy that could hit 50 points with some nice peripherals, like that's really great for Justin Faulk. That's immense value. It's a guy you could get as your 4D that could bring you like 3D value. I do think that this guy is going to be a huge value this year wherever you get him. So I mean, do you have anything else, or do you want to move on to the targets here?
No, I agree. That's pure value. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if his name's escaping me. Ex Oilers guy takes his
Broberg
spot, for a bit.
Broberg,
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, but it's Justin Fox for now. He's got to give a reason for Broberg to take that position, either with injury or just he's not clicking due to age or whatever. But yeah.
Yep, for sure. All right. My top three targets are Pavel Buchnevich, Jordan Kyrou, and Justin Faulk. You could throw Robert Thomas in there as well, just because his ADP, I have been projected for 88 points, and his Yahoo ADP is 116.8, and in Apples to Getos it's 118.5. Like that's crazy value for a guy that could get well over a point per game. Obviously, like I mentioned, there's not a ton of peripherals there, so keep that in mind. Doesn't shoot, doesn't hit, doesn't block, but he's gonna get you points, and he's done it pretty consistently. Pavel Buchnevich, though, his Yahoo ADP is 153, which is just disrespectful for Buchnevich, in my opinion. He's got left wing and right wing eligibility, so that dual eligibility is always really nice. And in that range, he's going to destroy that ADP in terms of his value. And in Apples and Genos leagues, even he's going at 90.8. So I do think that he could produce better than that as well. So, and then Jordan Kyrou, he's a right winger, so that's a position of scarcity. But in Yahoo, like you said, he's being disrespected, 130.9, and this is a guy that could score you 35 goals. So,
yep. I
like Jordan Kyrou as a value pick, and then like I mentioned, I already talked about Justin Faulk. So Gugsy, any other names here that we didn't mention? I guess we kind of mentioned all the big names. What are your thoughts about these guys? Am I crazy? Is there anyone you'd add here?
You said it best in your notes. Everyone on this team is undervalued. The vibes are off on the St. Louis Blues. Even the players that aren't really worth rostering, you could get those guys on the wire. Fuck, man. Jake Neighbors is he's going to be up on the power play one, and you can get him relatively late. You could get him as your last pick if you're league shallow enough. So yeah, I like this team. I think there's a lot of value. I agree with you on that. And some of my keepers leagues, where I sell everything last season, and so I only have late round picks. I think those leagues are going to be filled with St. Louis Blues just because of how valuable these players are.
Yeah, it's another team that I'm intrigued by. It's not a team that I think is going to be good overall, but it's a team that I'm definitely going to be watching for the fantasy assets. They're top heavy, and then there's the whole offer sheet situation with Broberg and Holloway. I'll be interested to see how those guys do as well. So there's definitely storylines around this team that kind of make them that might make them a little bit fun.
They're interesting
for sure.